In the modern era of criminal investigation, the most damning witness is often silent and made of glass and silicon. We carry our deepest secrets in our pockets buried under layers of encryption and biometric locks. When a crime occurs, this digital vault becomes the central focus of detectives and prosecutors who are desperate to peer inside. The battle to unlock a suspect's phone is not just a technical challenge, but a high-stakes game of chess played between law enforcement and the privacy algorithms designed to keep them out. This is the story of how a single locked device became the key to solving a mystery that had stumped the best minds in the state. The story begins on a frigid November evening in the quiet town of Maplewood, situated deep in the American Midwest. The year was 2016, and the community was preparing for the upcoming holiday season with lights strung across Main Street and frost gathering on the windows of the local diner. It was the kind of place where doors were left unlocked and neighbors knew each other by name. This sense of security was shattered when 24-year-old librarian Sarah Jenkins failed to return home from her evening shift. Her car was found abandoned on a lonely stretch of County Road 9 with the engine cold and the driver's side door wide open. Local law enforcement arrived at the scene shortly after midnight, finding no signs of a struggle and no physical evidence to indicate an abduction. The gravel road was undisturbed, and the surrounding woods were silent. Inside the vehicle, Sarah's purse was still on the passenger seat containing her wallet and keys, but her smartphone was missing. Detective Mark Harrison, a veteran investigator with 20 years of experience, arrived to coordinate the search. He knew immediately that the missing phone was the critical piece of the puzzle. In a world where we are constantly connected, the sudden silence of a mobile device is often the first scream for help. For 3 agonizing days, the town of Maplewood held its breath as search parties combed the dense forests and dragged the local river. Volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder through tall grass praying for a sign, while helicopters equipped with thermal imaging cameras scanned the terrain from above. Detective Harrison interviewed friends, family, and coworkers, but every lead turned into a dead end. Sarah was described as a creature of habit with no known enemies and a quiet social life. The lack of physical clues was frustratingly absolute, leaving the investigation drifting without a compass. On the morning of the 4th day, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A group of teenagers hiking near an old quarry found a smartphone half buried in the mud near a creek bed. It was a high-end model encased in a pink protective shell, matching the description of Sarah's device. They immediately turned it over to the police station. Detective Harrison felt a surge of hope as he held the device in an evidence bag. This was the silent witness they had been waiting for. However, that hope was quickly tempered by the realization that the device was locked with a complex 6-digit passcode and biometric security. The phone was rushed to the state digital forensics lab, where technicians attempted to bypass the lock screen. In the past, accessing data on a mobile device was a relatively straightforward process for law enforcement. However, recent updates to mobile operating systems had introduced robust encryption that made unauthorized access nearly impossible without the passcode. The data on the phone was scrambled into gibberish, and the key to unscramble it existed only in the mind of the owner or on a piece of paper somewhere. The technicians plugged the phone into their specialized extraction tools, but the screen remained stubbornly black, displaying only the demand for a code. Detective Harrison was informed that the device had a security feature that would permanently erase all data after 10 failed attempts to enter the passcode. This fail-safe mechanism turned the investigation into a high-pressure situation where one wrong guess could destroy the only evidence they had. The tech giants in Silicon Valley had designed these systems to protect user privacy against hackers and thieves. But in this instance, the same security was protecting the secrets of a potential crime scene. The legal team for the department began drafting subpoenas to the manufacturer, but they knew that even the company itself might not be able to unlock the device. As the legal battle brewed, the investigation into Sarah's disappearance shifted focus to her digital footprint that could be accessed without the phone. Police subpoenaed her service provider for call logs and cell tower triangulation data. The records showed that her phone had pinged a tower near the quarry at the time she vanished, but the data was not precise enough to pinpoint a location or identify who she might have been with. The cloud backups for her device had not been updated in 3 weeks, leaving a critical gap of information leading up to the night she went missing. The answers were trapped inside the physical silicon chip. Weeks turned into months, and the case began to grow cold. The snow melted in Maplewood, and the ribbons for Sarah faded on the telephone poles. Detective Harrison kept the locked phone in a secure locker, looking at it every day as a reminder of his failure. He knew that the killer was likely someone local, someone who was walking free, because the digital key remained turned. The pressure from Sarah's parents was heartbreaking, as they pleaded for updates that Harrison could not provide. The detective spent his nights reading about encryption standards and brute force algorithms, searching for a loophole. Then came a turning point in the world of digital forensics. A third-party security firm operating out of a nondescript office park in Virginia announced they had developed a proprietary method to exploit a vulnerability in the specific chipset used in Sarah's phone. This technique, known as a bootstrap exploit, allowed them to bypass the limit on passcode attempts. It meant they could try every possible combination of numbers from 0 to 1 million without triggering the data wipe feature. It was expensive and experimental, but it was the only chance the investigation had left. Detective Harrison secured the funding from the district attorney and personally transported the evidence to the firm. The facility was more like a high-security vault than a laboratory, with air-gapped computers and Faraday cages, designed to block all wireless signals. The technicians explained that the process would involve carefully managing the electrical current to the processor to trick it into accepting unlimited guesses. They hooked the phone up to a robotic device that would mechanically tap in codes 24 hours a day until it hit the correct sequence. The brute force attack had begun. Back in Maplewood, the investigation had zeroed in on a person of interest named Greg Miller, a casual acquaintance of Sarah who worked at the local hardware store. Miller had an alibi, claiming he was home alone watching movies on the night of the disappearance. Without physical evidence or a witness placing him at the scene, the police could not arrest him. Harrison brought Miller in for another round of questioning, hoping to rattle him. Miller sat in the interrogation room, calm and arrogant, knowing that the police had nothing concrete. He denied ever being near the quarry or having any contact with Sarah that night. The robot in Virginia continued its work, entering thousands of codes per hour. 1 day passed, then 2, then a week. The anxiety was palpable. Every hour that ticked by was another hour the killer had to cover his tracks. Harrison feared that perhaps Sarah had used a complex alphanumeric password instead of a simple PIN, which would make the brute force method take decades rather than days. He questioned whether they were chasing a ghost in the machine. But on the 9th day, the phone screen flickered to life. The correct code had been found. The digital vault was open. The data extraction was immediate and comprehensive. The technicians pulled gigabytes of information, including photos, text messages, location history, and app data. The raw files were sent securely to Detective Harrison, who sat down at his computer with a cup of stale coffee, ready to sift through the digital life of the victim. What he found was a timeline of the murder recorded in millisecond precision. The phone's internal health app had tracked Sarah's steps, showing exactly when she was walking, when she was running, and when all movement stopped. The most damning evidence came from a series of deleted text messages that the forensic software was able to recover. Sarah had been communicating with a contact saved under a pseudonym. The messages revealed a secret relationship that had turned volatile. The contact was demanding she meet him at the quarry to talk, or he would expose private photos. The phone number associated with the contact was a burner phone, but the location data on Sarah's device showed that her phone and another device had been paired via Bluetooth in her car just minutes before she vanished. Using the Bluetooth identifier found in the system, Logs Harrison was able to trace the paired device. It was the infotainment system of a specific truck model, a truck model that Greg Miller drove. Furthermore, the GPS data on Sarah's phone showed that after the time of death, the phone had traveled at 40 miles per hour towards the quarry before being thrown into the woods. This travel path perfectly matched the route from the crime scene to the location where Miller lived. The digital breadcrumbs were forming a trail that led straight to the suspect's front door. Armed with this new evidence, Detective Harrison obtained a search warrant for Greg Miller's home and vehicle. The digital data gave them probable cause to seize Miller's truck and subject it to a forensic analysis. Inside the vehicle's computer system, they found the corresponding Bluetooth record confirming that Sarah's phone had connected to it on the night of the murder. This destroyed Miller's alibi completely. He claimed he was home, but his truck and the victim's phone were communicating on a lonely road miles away. The police raided Miller's home in the early hours of the morning. He was asleep when the tactical team breached the door, completely unaware that the silent witness in the evidence locker had betrayed him. During the search, investigators found a burner phone hidden in a vent in the garage. This phone matched the number found in Sarah's recovered texts. The physical and digital worlds had finally collided to form an undeniable picture of guilt. Miller was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. During the trial, the prosecution presented the digital evidence on a large screen for the jury. An expert witness explained how the phone was unlocked and walked the jurors through the timeline. They saw the map of Sarah's final movements, overlaid with the movements of Miller's truck. They read the threatening text messages that had been pulled from the abyss of deleted data. It was a chilling demonstration of how much our devices know about us. The defense tried to argue that the digital evidence was circumstantial, but the precision of the GPS and Bluetooth data left no room for reasonable doubt. The most emotional moment of the trial came when the prosecution played a voice memo found on the phone. It was recorded inadvertently, likely when the phone was fumbled during the initial confrontation. The audio was muffled and filled with static, but the voice of Sarah Jenkins was audible, pleading for her life, followed by the distinct voice of Greg Miller telling her to be quiet. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence. The phone had not just tracked her location, it had listened to her final moments. This audio clip was the final nail in the coffin for the defense. Greg Miller was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a wave of relief to the town of Maplewood and a sense of closure to Sarah's grieving family. Detective Harrison stood outside the courthouse and watched as the transport van took Miller away. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction, but also a lingering unease about the power of the technology that had solved the case. The tool that had served justice was also a reminder of the total loss of privacy in the modern age. The case of Sarah Jenkins became a landmark reference for digital forensics in the state. It demonstrated that in the 21st century, there is no such thing as a perfect crime, because there is always a witness. Even in the absence of human eyes, the sensors and chips we carry with us are constantly observing, recording, and storing the truth. The unlocking of the phone was not just a technical victory. It was a validation of the tireless work of investigators who refused to let a machine keep a murderer's secrets. In the years that followed, the technology used to unlock the phone became more widespread and more controversial. Civil liberties groups argued that the ability to bypass encryption posed a threat to the privacy of innocent citizens, while law enforcement argued it was necessary to protect the public. The debate continues to rage in courtrooms and legislative halls across the country. But for the family of Sarah Jenkins, the issue was black and white. The technology had given them the truth, and that was all that mattered. Detective Harrison eventually retired from the force, but he kept the case file on his desk until his last day. He often thought about the irony of the situation. A device designed for communication had been used to silence a victim, but ultimately, it was that same device that spoke the loudest in court. The digital key had unlocked more than just a phone. It had unlocked the dark reality of a trusted neighbor and the hidden potential of forensic science. The legacy of the case lives on in the training manuals of the police academy, where young cadets are taught that a smartphone is as important as a fingerprint or a DNA sample. They learn to handle digital evidence with the same care as a murder weapon. The physical world and the digital world are no longer separate entities in criminal investigations. They are interwoven threads of the same tapestry. To solve a crime today, one must navigate the complex landscape of binary code as skillfully as the streets of the city. As we move forward into an era of artificial intelligence and ubiquitous computing, the lessons of Maplewood remain relevant. We are building a world where our devices know us better than we know ourselves. They know where we go, who we talk to, and what we fear. For criminals, this is a terrifying prospect. For victims, it is a glimmer of hope that the truth will eventually surface, no matter how deep it is buried or how complex the password is. The silent witness in the evidence locker is now just a piece of plastic and glass gathering dust. Its battery is dead and its screen is dark. But the data it yielded changed the lives of everyone involved. It proved that justice can be delayed by encryption, but it cannot be denied forever. The digital key exists for those with the persistence and the resources to find it. Ultimately, the story of unlocking the suspect's phone is a human story. It is about the determination of a detective, the grief of a family, and the arrogance of a killer who thought he could outsmart the system. It serves as a stark warning that in the digital age, silence is an illusion. We leave traces of ourselves everywhere we go, and sometimes those traces are the only things left to speak for us when we are gone. So the next time you pick up your phone and glance at the black mirror of the screen, remember the story of Sarah Jenkins. Remember that the device in your hand is a vault of secrets, a tracker of movements, and a potential witness to your life. It is a tool of immense power, and like all power, it can be used for good or for ill. In the right hands, it is a beacon of truth in the darkness. The midnight docket is closed on this case, but the questions it raises remain open. How much privacy are we willing to sacrifice for security? Who holds the keys to our digital lives? And what other secrets are waiting to be unlocked in the evidence rooms of the world? Until next time, stay safe and keep your passcodes close. From the quiet streets of Maplewood to the high-tech labs of Virginia, the journey of a single phone changed the course of justice. It reminds us that even the smallest object can cast a long shadow. The truth is out there, encoded in the ones and zeros, waiting for the right key to turn. And when it does, the silence will finally be broken.